How do I get those silly arms? Like, is this genetic? Have you always had like
So
bigger arms?
I kind of made a decision early on is I wanted to make consistent gains long term, and I wanted to have slow and steady gains.
You know, you won Jay Cutler's show. That
Yep.
was an untested
Yep.
show, obviously. So you're going against a lot of people enhanced.
And people are always going to accuse.
They want to know what your current body part split is.
It is one of the greatest, if I do say so myself, splits that I've ever written. It absolutely destroys you.
What's up, everybody? Kris Gethin here, and this is the Kris Gethin podcast. And here's a studio that we prepared earlier. We're in the boss status studio here with Doug Miller. What's up, brother?
What's happening? What's happening?
I just got wet because I just spilled drink all over me, but
Dude,
it's just on this side. It's okay.
But you didn't want to change your shirt because we wanted to match.
Yeah, exactly.
We wanted to make sure we look good,
His
like
and his.
twinsies.
Yeah. All right. So, Doug, thanks for being on the show, brother. Can you tell, like, of course, there's a lot of people that know who you are, especially you've been infiltrating my socials over the past 6 months as well. But for those of you that don't know who Doug is, Doug will explain right now.
Man, who is Doug Miller? That's a deep question. Well, I guess in regards to where our paths cross, it's really the bodybuilding world, right? So I am a lifetime drug-free bodybuilder. Competed many years. Well, now many years ago. I stopped competing in 2014, so about 10 years ago. Still train and live the lifestyle every day. Just business, family, all of that takes priority over actually competing. Have done quite a bit in the sport of natural bodybuilding. Won a couple pro level world championships, the Yorton Cup in 2009 and 2014. And, you know, I studied biochemistry in college, was really into sports as a youth. And when I went to college, I really focused on academics over athletics. So I was missing something. I was missing that training, that drive, like that's something to train towards. And so that's when I kind of picked up the weights. I was 18 years old when I was 17 years old. I was pretty young going to college and just kind of got hooked. I was really skinny. Like I was a very talented athlete, but never had the size. So I was like 130 pounds when I graduated high school. And that held me back from kind of competing at the next level. And so I needed that outlet, that drive. So a buddy of mine got me hooked on basically weight training. And so I very quickly became obsessed with my OCD type attitude. I kind of went on to the corners of the internet and just researched everything, read every muscle mag possible. This is like 2000, not even 2000, 1998. And basically got hooked on bodybuilding, right? And so tried to figure out everything myself, experimented with diet and eating. Within the first 6 months, I gained like 40 pounds. It was awesome.
40 pounds in 6 months.
40 pounds in 6 months.
What about at the end of the year?
That was probably where I slowed down at that point, right? Like, cause I was shredded. I was 130 pounds shredded, right? But I was, and then I filled out and then I was like, all right, I'm going to slow down. I was living on boxes of cereal at night. Like I was doing whatever I could to gain weight. And those newbie gains, like I would say the large majority of it was muscle. A lot of people thought I was on steroids right off the rip, going from 130 to like 175. Was a pretty big jump. And that was probably a year, took me 45, but I gained 30 pounds very quickly. And I became kind of obsessed with it. And, I got into the supplement space basically because I wasn't really happy with what was out there. The options that were out there, they were loaded with fillers or, some ridiculous marketing. And they weren't what I wanted to use. And so after I graduated college, I studied biochemistry and also economics. I was working, doing economic litigation consulting. I needed a meal replacement. And there was only like those Myoplex packets. Remember those with the maltodextrin in them? And
they were chalky.
And they were super chalky. I was like, this is awful. So I basically took $20,000 of my own money and invested into formulating a whole grain based meal replacement that I could use while I was working in the office, right? And so that was Core MRP. So you started Core Nutritionals. I started it with a partner actually. And then after a year or two, he left and basically developed the brand Core Nutritionals, and that's how I got into the supplement space. And kind of just kept on reinvesting money. I had a really good job, and so I just reinvested every penny for about 7 years and built the brand out to be, a very wide-reaching brand in terms of like the SKU offerings we had, and that brand really started doing well and growing and becoming a household name, at least in the natural bodybuilding world, as I became more popular and won those world championships. And that's really when things took off. And then in 2013, I quit my day job. So after about 12 years working in the corporate world, the brand was doing well enough where I was like, I got to go all in. And that's when things really kind of started taking off. And then through then, I started opening retail stores as well, a chain of retail stores called the Nutrition Corner. So we have 12 stores. And that branched off into more brands, Miracle Labs and Arms Race Nutrition, partnership with Julian Smith, and then MyoBlocks, and then Unmatched, and the world of supplements, really the space of supplements. And then more recently, I've gotten into the gym business because that's really at the heart of all of this. That's my love. It's my love for training and working hard. And so we've created the Crusher Coliseum. So, but that's how that was my journey to where we are today, basically.
So you participated in various sports, but
Yep.
got into bodybuilding. What is it about like bodybuilding or weight training? What gave you that something that the other sports don't?
Oh man, I like it. I like it. It's one of the pluses and the minuses of bodybuilding, because bodybuilding is definitely a 24/7 sport. And, I have a ton of discipline, and I think that's where my discipline could shine, because I could out diet somebody and I could outwork somebody, right? And so like I don't have the best genetics in the world. People might say, "Oh, you have good calves and biceps, so you have good genetics," but like, my parents aren't walking around all jacked naturally. Like they're just, I don't have the best genetics, but I would put my work ethic in terms of the gym up against anyone. And so the ability to kind of work your way up from pretty much nothing, 130 pounds soaking wet, to competing on stage naturally at, close to 200 pounds, that was literally just years of grinding. And so as much as it's, people hate that it's a 24/7 sport, I think that's a really cool aspect of it, more so than even other sports.
Yeah. So you like to be a little bit obsessive over things.
Obsessive over things. And, honestly, I like to be uncomfortable, if that makes sense. Like I liked having the show deadline, because it kind of gives you something to look forward to, and it allows you to appreciate the finer things, the nicer things in life, because you have to be spot on disciplined throughout. I'm not a huge believer in just hitting macros with just junk, right? So, like I wouldn't even eat a protein bar during my diet. Now, I don't really subscribe to that now. But, when I was really competing at my peak, like I wouldn't even eat a protein bar. It's either whole food or probably a protein shake, and that's about it. And so having that level of discipline, and then, coming off your plan and actually living like a somewhat normal person for a little bit, really makes you appreciate a lot of things. And so that was always fun. And I always like to have that deadline, that goal to, kind of shoot for.
Did you ever binge after a show?
Yeah, but still, like I would get back on it really quickly. My worst, after 2009 World Championships, I think I ate like a whole Pizza Hut pizza. That was about it, and then maybe a dessert. But like after that Monday, or by the next day, Sunday, we probably went and had pancakes for breakfast, chocolate chip pancakes or something. But man, your stomach's kind of shrunk at that point. Like you just feel like shit. So it's just like, it's not even worth it. But I would get pretty much right back on it, and I'd be back in the gym, if not that Sunday, that Monday for sure. It's just, I never got into the binging thing.
What sort of mistakes do you think that you made?
Dude, I made them all. I made them all. I remember, because we're talking, my first show was in 2002. And this is when the internet was really just starting to thrive. Like I was learning everything I could on bodybuilding.com, Anabolic Minds, Anabolic Review, all these, websites where they talked about bodybuilding and peak week and all these things. And my first show, I'll never forget, I almost passed out on stage because I did everything wrong. I cut out sodium about 6 weeks out. Sodium. Right now, in my last show, when I looked the best I ever did, I had about 8 grams of sodium the day before. So like, it's a massive difference. I cut out sodium. Like I avoided it. I didn't salt my food. I used potassium salt on everything. And that's all I did. It was couldn't get any pumps. I was shredded, but I couldn't get any pumps. It sucked. I did liquid glycerol backstage. I did wine. I drank some wine because I heard it could bring out vascularity. I did the hot stuff. And like after drinking like a couple ounces of wine and I'm going on stage and I haven't really eaten a whole lot. And my electrolytes are all screwed up. Like I remember doing the most muscular and I had to like, like I'm stepping, like I'm falling forward. My friends still say like, I thought you were coming right over the stage. So I did everything wrong. Did it in about an 8-week prep, my first show. And then later on, I would turn that into a 24-week prep. So, yeah, I did everything wrong. But from that, I learned, there's kind of one of those things is like, when I used to coach people, so I also coach people for a long time. I've given that up now just because I don't have the bandwidth to do it. I was a good coach because I pretty much did it all. And I figured it out myself by doing all the mistakes so that I was able to coach people of what not to do. So I made all those mistakes for them pretty much. So yeah, I made them all.
Right. And then when it comes to, the drug-free bodybuilding, you've always been an advocate of being drug-free. What were the reasons behind that? Like, were you ever enticed to think,
yeah.
okay, I want to go IFBB Pro?
100%. 100%. Not that I wanted to go IFBB Pro, but like, anybody who says they haven't thought about it, I don't care how holier than thou natural you are, you've thought about it at some point. And so, yeah, especially in my early 20s, thinking about like, man, like I'm working really hard and I don't look anything like this Muscle magazine, right? like I look good, but I don't look anything like that. What in the world, right? So there's certainly, times where I've even gone down the route of just, researching it or just seeing what it was about, but and like what people are saying about it and like, but it just seemed like this dark, shady, seedy world that at some point I decided I didn't want any part of it. Right. And, there was really a number of reasons. Besides the obvious is that it was illegal, right? Like I wasn't going out and getting a prescription for testosterone, right? Like it was, and you're not just taking testosterone. I mean, it's illegal, right? Like it was like you're taking drugs. So I had a really good job. I was concerned with that. I think probably the biggest thing was I wanted to look good / decent all the time. And a lot of, you would see these shows in the muscle mags that would cover the shows. There wasn't really like the Instagram back then, but you'd see these bodybuilders, like sometimes they'd put pictures of guest posing and these dudes look straight up fat. They were super soft and puffy, and whether they were on or they were off or what they were doing at that time, like they look like shit. They look like bloated, buffoons, really. I was like, this is just not a good look. Now, of course, they looked incredible by the time they got to the competition, but like, what was the sacrifice then? And so I kind of made a decision early on is I wanted to make consistent gains long term, and I wanted to have slow and steady gains as opposed to this. Right. And then you hear stories of like the depression that sets in when people are going off of their drug cycles and stuff like that. And it's pretty widespread. I think now with social media, you see people talking about it quite a bit. Like I didn't want any of that. Like I really didn't want any part of it. And then as I was starting to do well in natural bodybuilding, it was kind of like, I found a place where I can do well and I'm getting better. Like, I think this is where I'm going to stay, right? Like why take that risk to jump to the next level and then maybe you don't make it. And then I started a supplement brand that was based around natural bodybuilding. And so then it was really a business decision, to stay natural. So there was really quite a few reasons, but, after the initial, few months of really getting into bodybuilding and, like, what is this about? And, what are these guys doing? And that research. And it just was like, this doesn't look like something I want anything to do with. After that, there was really kind of like, there wasn't even any desire whatsoever.
What about, you won Jay Cutler's show. That was an untested show, obviously. So you're going against a lot of people enhanced. Did that ever give you the drive then to go, you know what, I'm going to go do the nationals. I'm going to try to go for my
so that was a little bit of an interesting story. So after I won the Yorton Cup that year, which was like, it was like the biggest natural bodybuilding show that there is. This is right when like Instagram was starting. Like I actually made a post and I said like, should I do somebody was like, you got to do the Jay Cutler. And I was really on the fence about doing it because Whoa, I thought we were going to have a Kris Gethin moment there. I was really on the fence about doing it because I really didn't want to, like, it wasn't that I didn't want to support NPC. It wasn't that. It was kind of like, would I be doing natural bodybuilding a disservice by doing it? And the overwhelming majority of the people, I'm talking like 99% of the people were like, absolutely do it. Go represent. You know, there's no real negative downside to it. So I was like, all right, I'll do it. And to be honest with you, I felt good going in. You know, I know some of those guys were bigger than me, but at that point, generally when you go to some of these shows, they just don't get quite as crispy, the guys that are enhanced. And so I felt pretty good going in, but it was really cool to win that show. And I think it opened a lot of eyes for people that, you know, question natural bodybuilders. Because, like, let's be honest, most people you're either a shitty natural bodybuilder or you're accused of being on drugs. And I always tell people I'd rather be accused of being on drugs. And I was definitely accused of being on drugs winning that show. And then after I won that show, that probably capped off about 25 or 26 weeks of dieting. And I had a 6-month-old at that time. Jackson was 6 months. And I was just kind of over it, to be honest with you. And everyone's like, dude, you have 1 week. You can go another week and go to national. You can win your pro card. It's like, no, I'm good. I'm good. Do I regret that? Not really. You know, part of me was like, maybe I should have done it just to see how well I stacked up. I would have been in the light heavyweight class. Those guys are probably 4 inches shorter than I am. It would have been interesting, but I was just done. You know, I did 3 shows in about 22 days and I was just done. And the way I was carbing up and depleting, it was pretty intense. Like I'd carb up on 1,200 grams of carbs in, you know, a 12-hour period, you know, like, and then, you know, deplete pretty hard. It was pretty intense. So I was just done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. So, you know, obviously getting used to people accusing you of, you know, taking drugs, which is, I guess, you know, you take that as an accolade. You're achieving something that they are telling themselves that they can't.
Right.
You know, they live under short ceilings. A lot of people accuse Mike O'Hearn as being on drugs. Now, my honest opinion is that you're freakier than Mike. So I want to get your opinion. Do you think Mike is natty or not?
If you've seen Mike's pictures, like he's been jacked his entire life. Like I've seen pictures of him at like 18. He was a freaking monster. And, you know, he was clearly like, he looked natural. Like when you start taking excessive drugs and even drugs, period, like you pretty much can tell. You don't look natty. Like you just get a little bit of a red hue to you. Your skin tone looks a little different. Your traps become overly, you know, juicy compared to other areas. Like you just have these signs. So, you know, for me to sit here and say like he's definitely not natural, like I couldn't say that. Like I do believe that, you know, he's probably natural. Now I don't know. Like I haven't really seen him up close in person in years, and he's got to be almost 60 years old.
Yeah, 57.
Yeah, so maybe he's on TRT or peptides now, just given that he wants to still continue to perform in this area, and at some point in time, your test levels are going to drop. Maybe, but like, do I believe he was natural the very large majority of his life? Absolutely. I mean, like, his genetics were freaky. Like, have you seen pictures of him at like a really young age? Like,
yeah, so he won the USA powerlifting titles and bodybuilding titles within the same year as a teenager.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
And if you look at his son, Titan, he came round to my house. I think it was last year. Yeah, it was last year, and brought his.
Is he a beast?
He's huge. We had like at the time, I think he was like 5, maybe 6, 5. Anyway, and there was another kid there that was 4 years older than him. He
Same
was
size?
No, bigger. He was bigger.
Dude,
So
that's awesome.
yeah, so I think that there's definitely a genetic
For sure.
disposition there for sure. And people will look at that genetics because, like, if you think of the amount of weight that he lifts, he's lifting more than what Ronnie was lifting, but he doesn't look like Ronnie. So to me, I give him the benefit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, people are always going to accuse, right? Like, as you said, they put ceilings on themselves. And I think that's something that I think everyone always thinks about, like, what is like the natural limit? And I was like, who cares what the natural limit is? like if you are even thinking about that, then like you will never reach your potential. Like if you're always worried about, oh, he can't be natural or you can't achieve that naturally, all you're doing is you're putting that in your mind that you can't do it. Maybe you might not ever get to a certain level, but you will be able to get better than you are now. And so people start just looking for the easy way out, pretty much.
Yeah. Have you ever thought more of being a little bit more of an evangelist for natural bodybuilding, putting more content out there? Because a lot of people are going onto social media these days. They're just seeing people like the Trend Twins because it is trendy. And then you start not even with the idea that they're going to compete sometimes. It's just they think, okay, I can get a shortcut. I don't have the patience. This is the way that I'm going to go.
Well, I'll be honest, I don't really consume much of the Trend Twins content. I know who they are, but like, so that's not even my world. Like, I don't even live in that world to know, like, oh man, like, I need to go out there and save these young bucks who are about to go down this path. So maybe if I saw more of it, maybe I'd feel that way. But like, honestly, people are going to choose what they're going to choose. I like to do it more in a local setting, and have these conversations in the grassroots in our gyms and things like that. But I don't know. I don't like the idea of being this holier than thou natty. Like, I believe people have free will and are able to make their own decisions. And if they want to do it, I mean, that's on them. Like, it's the same thing. It's like, I'm not going to put out content telling people not to snort coke or smoke up or, do shrooms or whatever they want to do, heroin. You're like, if they want to do that, that's their life, that's their thing, that's fine. So like for me, I don't feel drawn to like, that's my crusade, like to save those people. I think what I do feel drawn to do is to show people what is possible naturally, just live out, my life and try to show more. I mean, that's one of the things I'm trying to do in 2025 that I really want to do is just capture more of what happens in my life on a daily basis. The past year, 2024, was a pretty wild year. And I really kind of took a step back from social because, let's be honest, a lot of people do a lot on social, but they don't do a lot outside of social. Mine was the opposite. I had a lot of shit going on outside of social, and I wasn't doing much on social. But I think there's a part to just business and brand building and everything that showing more of the everyday grind that you're doing, I think resonates with a lot of people, and showing that you can do a lot of things and you can do it drug-free, I think is important. So I'd like to create more content around that, more so than just don't do drugs, like that type of thing.
Yeah. And that's a segue that I wanted to talk about as well. Like, you run, how many businesses do you have now?
That's a tough one. It's terrible. I don't know if I could actually tell you. So we have 2 gyms, we have 12 stores, we have 5 supplement brands, couple real estate things. Yeah, there's a lot going on.
There's a lot. And you're obviously a parent, you coach football as well. You've got a lot going on.
Yep.
There's a lot of people out there that'll use kids or their lives as an excuse. And both you and your wife, like, don't miss your workouts, you eat healthy. How are you able to navigate all of this, but still work out as if you're competing? You write down all your reps and sets, you count your macros. How do you do it all? And how can you kind of put the message out there that you can't utilize that as your excuse?
Yeah, it's a non-negotiable for me. Like, I literally will block my time. Like, I'll get into the office at like 7:30, but then I'll sit down and start working. I'll get about an hour done, email, stuff like that. And then, I'll block a 2-hour time period where like most of the time, I train with Dave and the formulator for Unmatched, and like most of the time we're working while we're working out too. But like, that's the time period that I'm not taking a call. I'm not doing it. Now, Dave has the bad habit of taking a call during that time. But like, I won't take a call. Like, that's my time to get better. And honestly, it's part of the business. It's part of what we do. But I think it's really important that I do make it a priority. I think you can do anything if you make it a priority. The people, they say they don't have time to do X, Y, and Z, it's because it isn't really a priority. And for me, it's always been a priority. I will say the other thing, I'm very blessed to have a spouse who also gets it and also lives it. So like, this past week, the boys have been out of school. So it's just like, how do we get this done? So Steph's been up at 4:00. She'll go to the gym and I'll be home, with the boys, probably sleeping a little later. She was at the gym. She was coming home from the gym at 7:15 this morning, And then I left, to go to work, and then I got, my workout in. And then it's really important to us to basically train our boys and to do it at a young age to instill in them the importance of being physically strong. And so, then she took them through a workout for an hour. So it was part of so they trained 5 days. Usually they train 3 or 4 days a week on top of their sports, but this week they trained 5 days. Yesterday was really cool because we were able to take them to the Crusher Coliseum while Aaron and I were filming content, and she was training them there. They're doing goblet squats and all this other stuff. So I think it does really help to have somebody who understands, right? And so I think you really need to find that person that understands that this is going to be a priority, because at the end of the day, if my health is gone and I'm not in good shape and I don't feel good or any of that, then I'm not going to be a good parent or a good, spouse. But I will say it's not easy. It is not easy, and I'm not perfect at it. And it's a lot of times I don't have balance. People say that, like, what's this? I think balance is much more of a longer term thing than it is a shorter term. Like, I can't be great at all of those things you said. I can't be great at leading these businesses, being a husband, being a father, doing all of this stuff. I can't be great all the time. So I think balance is more of a longer term concept, right? And so it's just like, I think I go through periods of time where I need to really be dedicated to the businesses to get them in a spot where I can then take a step back and have more time to spend doing those other things. Mm-hmm. And so there's always a give or take there. But long story short, it's not easy, and it is a challenge. But, like, honestly, I make it a priority, and you can do anything as long as you make it a priority. And a lot of people say, I just don't have time. You totally could. You might have to give up some sleep, mm-hmm. or sitting on your butt watching TV or Netflix or whatever. Then you really want it.
How important is it for you to be, like a bodybuilder, live that life and be a supplement owner? How do they cross-pollinate? Because there's a lot of people out there that own supplement brands, but they never work out.
Yeah. I think it does help tell the story, because, like, when I talk to people about it, like, a lot of times I'll get people coming up to asking me. They might not even know I own a supplement company, but they'll come up and ask me, and then they see I'm really educated at supplements, and it helps. So I think it just validates, it provides credibility, right? For that, like, I know, clearly I look like I know what I'm doing. That helps a lot. That helps people get over that barrier right there. And also, we run these businesses slightly different. It's not 100% business. A lot of this is our personal passions, and that's the way I want to live my life. And so I think it's important to do things that you truly are passionate about. And I think that will help make the business successful. So it is hard to buy or listen to certain businessmen try to sell supplements, right? And listen, I don't judge. I don't even hate the game. I don't hate the player. I don't any of like it's super impressive what some people have been able to do in the space, and they don't even work out. They don't even take their supplements. That's just a great business mind, right? And so I think what we do, though, is different. I think people that come here and experience what we have going on at HQ here do leave with this renewed sense of, I guess, hope for the industry of what we're trying to do. So I think it really is important. And I think any leader that is actually living the lifestyle and, has actions to back up their words is worth a ton.
Mm-hmm. Gives it, like, more authenticity.
100%.
Like, it's like, if you're a trainer, then you at least want to look like you work out, because if you're trying to market yourself, you want to be your own shop window front.
That's the best marketing. Steph, when she was used to personal train, like, she did zero, like, cold calling or any prospecting or any of that. It was just, man, you look jacked. I want to have your arms, or I want to have your legs. And that's how you get customers, right? And so it's the same thing really with supplements.
Okay. So I put out a little post on my stories earlier, and I just let people know I'll be interviewing you. What sort of questions? So no, they're pretty straightforward. They want to know what your current body part split is.
So I actually just went to a new one. It's quite a complicated split. It's a 16-day split. It rotates body parts. It's one of these ones that I've created probably about 15 years ago. And it is one of the greatest, if I do say so myself, splits that I've ever written, but it absolutely destroys you. And I couldn't even give you, I could probably off the top of my head tell you what the days are, but it's kind of too complicated to run through. What I will tell you is the split that I just ended which has been my go-to split pretty much for the last 5 years on and off, because it is super. I used to be able to train about 6 days a week. Now 6 days a week just kills me. So 5 days a week is better. And also with the schedule of my kids and everything else, having a little bit more set on, not having to train. Every Sunday I'm off. Every Thursday I'm off. It just makes better for planning, right? So the split was basically it's Monday is chest and back. Tuesday is quad and calves. Wednesday is shoulders and arms. So that's basically you've hit your whole body almost, but legs, I didn't do hammies really, maybe a little bit. And then Thursday's day off. And then Friday, you come back and you do hamstrings and calves. So I split my legs. And then on Saturday, I will do chest and back again. And then when I come back around, Sunday I'm off. And then when I come back around to Monday, I'm not going to do chest and back again. I'm going to do shoulders and arms. So basically how the split lays out is legs are always on Tuesday and Friday. So I do quads and calves and hams and calves. And then Monday, Wednesday, Saturday alternate between chest and back and shoulders and arms.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really good because you're not doing 5 exercises for chest or 5 exercises and just murdering it like a typical bro split. You're doing maybe 3, maybe 4 at most. And you're getting a good pump, you're getting stronger, and then you recover, and then you're hitting it again in 3 or 4 days. So it works really well. I feel like it gives you enough rest, you recover well, and you get strong throughout it. Yeah. And then obviously legs, I'm always a believer you should get 2 leg days a week.
Okay. So someone else said, how do I get those silly arms? Is this genetic? Have you always had bigger arms, or is that something that just accumulated?
I think some of it's genetic. I think muscle insertions are somewhat, they're genetic. They're not somewhat genetic. They are genetic. But I would say that I did focus on arms early on in my training. So one tip that I would have is if you have the ability to do it. When I was young, single, and just obsessed with bodybuilding, I would train arms once a week. Now, obviously, I would hit them. I was doing a bro split. I would hit them. You hit your arms when you train chest. You hit your triceps. You hit your biceps when you train back. But I would have a one single arm day, and I would split up my arms. So before I went to work, I would train triceps for about an hour and 15 minutes. Then I'd go to work, and then I'd come home, and I'd train just biceps for an hour and 15 minutes. And I split my arms. And I did that for probably a couple years. And it definitely helped. Now, I train them after shoulder. In that split I just described, I train them after shoulders, and I'm doing each workout maybe 7 or 8 sets bis, 7 or 8 sets tris, something like that. So nothing crazy. Back then, when I was first trying to really grow them, I was doing, about 20 sets for tris in the morning, 20 heavy sets at night. And I'll tell you what, I would get so sore I couldn't move my arms for days, but it was awesome, and it definitely works. So if you want to shock your muscle, do that for 12 weeks, and I guarantee you'll notice a difference.
Okay. The gyms are going to be packed now.
I know.
Squat racks will be packed with people doing curls.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the one thing is also I would go heavy. I would push it heavy. Now, some I would do real strict form isolation, but I feel like some people, my form's a little loose on a lot of the things I do, but it's controlled cheating, right? And I think some people, if you're standing there with a barbell curl and you're trying to perfect form with no arch or anything, you're never going to be able to stimulate your biceps enough with that. So I always had, a pretty loose form on one exercise and then the next. So if I was doing heavy barbell curls, at one point I was working up to 185 and curling it for 10, 12 reps, little loose form, a little swaying and stuff like that. And then the next exercise I'd do an isolation preacher cable curl or something super strict. And then I'd come back and I'd do heavy hammer curls where I'm just manhandling the hundreds or something like that, loose form. It's almost like a full body. And then I'd come back and do another, a more controlled. And I think doing that does actually help with hypertrophy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, moving on to Unmatched, only a question here for you. So we launched about 6 months ago. We've put something out there very different on the market, a product that has paraxanthine, creatine. Our grass-fed whey comes from the UK, obviously all naturally sweetened. What do you feel that needs to be done with Unmatched to continue, because we've set the bar, to continue setting that bar moving forward based on the expectations that people may have?
Oh, it's in the works, baby. It's in the works. So, I mean, if you look at the categories that we're in, we're not in a ton of categories yet. We're in the pre-workout space, electrolytes, aminos, protein, pretty basic, and creatine with the creatine, but pretty basic categories. But there's so much more we can do, especially with the ethos of the brand, kind of bridging the health span, biohacking world with more of the hardcore performance. There are so many different things we can do. And so super excited about 2 Shreds, right, coming up, which is like a 2-phase AM PM fat burner that, I don't think people are going to be, I think people will be surprised at the fat burner because we're not using any caffeine in it, but it's a super potent, fat burning product that's actually going to work and not just stimulate out of your mind. The test booster product that we have working on, using a combination of ingredients that I haven't seen before, a lot of trademarked ingredients. So these are 2 really big categories that we haven't even bridged into yet, which we will be, in the very near future. So there's a lot more we can do. And as you know, like our R&D list is probably we're 10, 12, products down the line already. So I think there's going to be a lot of unique things here, unique formulas in pretty mainstream categories like the test boosting, the fat burner. But even outside of that, I think there's some cool things we can do on the stem cell, side and some of this new emerging technology and research that's coming out based on like longevity. I think there's some cool spins we can take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. That's one thing that I really love about bridging that gap between, like, let's call it the biohacking community and the sports performance. Because if you look at bodybuilding as a whole, even if natural bodybuilding isn't necessarily healthy, and some of the supplements aren't healthy either, but we're bridging that gap. So we're going to be exhibiting at a biohacking event this year as well, which I don't really see sports performance companies doing that. So to bridge that gap is pretty awesome. And how old are you now? 43?
I'm 45.
45? So you got to start thinking about that now.
Oh, bro, I'm thinking about that's why I started Unmatched. You're going to take me to the promised land, baby.
Yeah, well, my arm's out of a sling at the moment, but it belongs in it. But you know what I mean. So that's put an end to our interview here. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Where can people find you and follow you?
Sure. Doug Miller Pro is pretty much all my handles. I'm not active on TikTok, but there is a Doug Miller Pro out there. Instagram is where I'm most active and where I communicate the most. So
You answer
Doug Miller
questions
Pro.
there?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow. Go hit him up.
Yeah, my DMs, they get filled.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you joining.
Absolutely.
And until next time, we are out.
Keep crushing it.